pulled that sumbitch out, and I beat him over the head with it!
The wrestling world just exploded. And when I say exploded, I mean the kind of seismic shockwave that leaves careers in ruins and corporate boardrooms in absolute chaos. Because what happened to Brock Lesnar isn't just a firing, it's potentially the opening shot in what could become the most expensive legal war in sports entertainment history. Think about this. You're Brock Lesnar, the beast incarnate, the man who conquered UFC, dominated WWE, and commanded multi-million-dollar contracts like they were pocket change. You've headlined WrestleMania's broken Undertaker's streak and held both WWE and Universal Championships. You're literally wrestling royalty. And then, in one devastating moment, everything you've built over 2 decades gets ripped away. Not because of what you did, but because of what someone else claims you were involved in. This is the story of how TKO Group Holdings just made what might be the most catastrophic business decision in wrestling history, and why Brock Lesnar could be sitting on legal grounds that might make their stock price look like a crashed airplane. The earthquake started with Janelle Grant, a former WWE employee who filed a lawsuit against Vince McMahon that reads like something out of a nightmare. Allegations of trafficking, abuse, and misconduct that sent shockwaves through the entire wrestling industry. But here's where it gets absolutely insane. Brock Lesnar gets named in this lawsuit, not as a defendant, not as someone being sued, but as someone who allegedly received explicit materials without consent. Now let's be crystal clear here. Lesnar hasn't been charged with anything. He hasn't been convicted of anything. Hell, he hasn't even been officially accused of any criminal wrongdoing. But TKO's response? They basically threw him under the bus and backed it up for good measure. Sources close to the situation are reporting that Brock Lesnar has been effectively banned from WWE programming. Banned. The same company that built storylines around him for over 2 decades just wiped him from existence like he was some rookie who couldn't draw a dime. And here's the kicker. They did it while he was potentially still under contract. But this is where the story takes a turn that could cost TKO more money than they've ever imagined losing. Because Brock Lesnar isn't just any wrestler. He's a legitimate athlete with crossover appeal, massive drawing power, and most importantly, expensive lawyers who specialize in entertainment law and wrongful termination. Think about the precedent this sets. TKO just demonstrated that they'll destroy a performer's career based on unproven allegations in a civil lawsuit where that performer isn't even a defendant. They've shown that due process, contractual obligations, and basic fairness mean absolutely nothing when public relations pressure mounts. And here's where things get really interesting from a legal standpoint. If Brock Lesnar was under contract with WWE, and multiple sources suggest he was, then TKO might have just committed one of the most expensive breaches of contract in entertainment history. We're talking about a performer who commanded 8-figure deals, who had specific performance guarantees, and who had image and likeness agreements that could extend years into the future. The financial implications are staggering. Lesnar's last reported WWE contract was worth multiple millions per year. But that's just the base salary. Factor in merchandise royalties, video game likeness deals, streaming residuals, and potential future earnings, and we're looking at a number that could easily climb into 9 figures. And that's before we even talk about punitive damages for what could be argued as defamation or intentional interference with business relationships. Legal experts are already whispering about the possibility of a massive lawsuit. And when I say massive, I'm talking about the kind of legal action that could fundamentally change how wrestling companies handle talent relations. We could be looking at claims for breach of contract, wrongful termination, defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and interference with prospective business advantage. But here's what makes this potentially nuclear for TKO. Brock Lesnar has options. He's not some indie wrestler who can't afford to fight back. He's got UFC money, WWE money, and the kind of legal representation that corporate executives have nightmares about. If he decides to go to war, this could get ugly fast. Imagine the discovery process in a lawsuit like this. Imagine Brock Lesnar's lawyers getting access to internal TKO communications, emails between executives, and documents showing how they made the decision to essentially blacklist him. Imagine them having to explain in depositions why they destroyed a man's career over allegations in a case where he's not even a defendant. The wrestling industry is watching this situation with a mixture of fascination and terror. Because if TKO gets away with this, it sends a message to every performer in the company. Your career can be ended at any moment, for any reason, regardless of contracts or due process. But if Lesnar fights back and wins, it could establish protections for wrestlers that have never existed before. And let's talk about the broader implications for TKO as a publicly traded company. They just made a decision that could expose them to potentially hundreds of millions in legal liability. Their stock price has already been volatile, and the last thing shareholders want to see is the company bleeding money in a prolonged legal battle with one of the biggest names in wrestling history. The entertainment law community is buzzing about this case. Some attorneys are calling it a potential landmark moment for performer rights in wrestling. Others are suggesting that TKO's actions could set them up for the kind of legal defeat that changes industry standards forever. But here's what really makes this situation explosive: the timing. This decision comes at a moment when TKO is trying to establish itself as a legitimate, publicly traded entertainment company. They're supposed to be the responsible corporate stewards of WWE's legacy. Instead, they've potentially opened themselves up to massive legal liability over what appears to be a panic-driven public relations decision. The questions keep mounting. Did TKO properly investigate before making their decision? Did they follow their own contractual procedures? Did they consider the legal ramifications of essentially blacklisting a performer based on allegations in a case where he's not a defendant? Because if the answer to any of these questions is no, Brock Lesnar's lawyers are probably salivating. Sources within the wrestling industry are suggesting that other performers are watching this situation very carefully. If TKO can do this to Brock Lesnar, arguably one of the most valuable and protected performers in company history, what does that mean for everyone else? The precedent being set here could have ramifications for every wrestling contract in the company. Legal analysts are already speculating about potential damages. We're not just talking about lost wages from WWE. We're talking about lost opportunities across the entire entertainment industry. Sponsorship deals that might evaporate. Movie opportunities that could disappear. The damage to Lesnar's brand and earning potential could be astronomical. And then, there's the reputation factor. Brock Lesnar built his brand on being an unstoppable force, a legitimate tough guy who conquered multiple combat sports. Having that reputation damaged by unproven allegations in a case where he's not even accused of wrongdoing? That's the kind of harm that damages extend far beyond simple contract disputes. The wrestling world is holding its breath, because what happens next could determine not just Brock Lesnar's future, but the future of performer rights in wrestling. Will TKO stand by their decision and weather whatever legal storm might be coming? Or will they quietly try to make this situation go away before it explodes into something that could cost them more money than they ever imagined? One thing is certain: Brock Lesnar didn't build his reputation by backing down from fights. And this might be the biggest fight of his career. Not in the ring, but in a courtroom, where the stakes could be measured in hundreds of millions of dollars. The clock is ticking, the lawyers are circling, and TKO might have just made the most expensive mistake in wrestling history. What do you think? Did TKO make the right call? Or are they about to face the legal battle of their lives? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, hit that subscribe button if you want to stay updated on this developing story, and ring that notification bell, because this situation is far from over. This could be the beginning of the most explosive legal battle in wrestling history, and you won't want to miss a single update.